जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी जय राधा जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी जय जय गोपी जन्नावल्लभा गिरिवरधारी जय जय गोपी जन्नावल्लभा गिरिवरधारी जय यशोदानंदन ब्रज जनरंजन 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 यमुना तीरा वनाचार्य यमुना यमुना तीरा वनाचार्य यमुना जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय गोपी जन्नावल्लभ गिरिवरधारी जय जय गोपी जन्नावल्लभ गिरिवरधारी जय यशोदानंदन ब्रज जनरंजन 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 यमुना तीरा वनाचार्य यमुना यमुना तीरा वनाचार्य यमुना Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Bolo. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Stottra Shata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Abhay Charanarvind Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai Shri Shri Kishore Kishori Ki Jai Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani Ki Jai Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Bhimanandi Hari Hari Bo. Hare Krishna. Just as a favor, can I request everyone to come forward? I feel like I'm speaking to a huge auditorium with everyone so far away. Please come forward. So, Hare Krishna. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be here. We want to thank um, His Grace Yamuna Jivan Prabhu and Sri Radhika Mataji for inviting us to Chicago and organizing the homeschooling convention in which we're participating. Um, Chicago is always a wonderful place to come back to visit, because in more than one ways, it's a birthplace for me and my family. Spiritually speaking, it's my parents' birthplace because this is where they began their Krishna consciousness. They started coming for the first time to an ISKCON temple here to Sri Sri Kishore Kishori in the 80s. And and then for me, it was my physical birthplace here, also in Chicago, not too far from here in Hoffman Estates. So um, we're really blessed to be here in the shelter of Kishore Kishori again. And for the purpose of this convention that's taking place, homeschooling convention, I was asked to speak on the theme of um, parenthood, parent-child relationships, like that. And so, for that purpose, we have this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, which is out of your regular sequence. But it's quite a famous one, and we know it's famous because even in your Bhagavatam book here at the temple, it's highlighted. So, it's definitely important. So, Canto 5, Chapter 5, text number 18. This chapter is called Lord Rishabdev's Teachings. So, please repeat. ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय गुरुर्न स स्यात् स्वजनो न स स्यात् पिता न स स्यात् जननी न सा स्यात् दैवं न तत्स्यान्न पतिश्च सा स्यान् नमो च येद्य समुपेत मृत्युम् गुरुर्न स स्यात् स्वजनो न स स्यात् पिता न स स्यात् जननी न सा स्यात् दैवं न तत्स्यान्न पतिश्च स स्यान् नमो च येद्य समुपेत मृत्युम् गुरुर्न स स्यात् स्वजनो न स स्यात् पिता न स स्यात् जननी न सा स्यात् दैवं न तत्स्यान्न पतिश्च स स्यान् नमो च येद्यः समुपेत मृत्युम् Please chant. Guru न स स्यात् स्वजनो न स स्यात् पिता न स स्यात् जननी न सा स्यात् दैवं न तत्स्यान्न पतिश्च स स्यान् नमो च येद्य समुपेत मृत्युम् गुरु न स स्यात् स्वजनो न स स्यात् पिता न स स्यात् जननी न सा स्यात् दैवं न तत्स्यान् पतिश्च स स्यान् नमो च येद्य समुपेत मृत्युम् गुरु न स स्यात् स्वजनो न स स्यात् पिता न स स्यात् जननी न सा स्यात् दैवं न तत्स्यान्न पतिश्च स स्यान् नमो च येद्य समुपेत मृत्युम् Ladies. गुरु न स स्यात् स्वजनो न स स्यात् पिता न स स्यात् जननी न सा स्यात् दैवं न तत्स्यान्न पतिश्च स स्यान् नमो च येद्य समुपेत मृत्युम् Guru na sasyat svajano na sasyat na sasyat janani na sasyat evam na tatsyan na patischa sasyan namo chayedya samupeta mrityum. Guru, a spiritual master, na, not, sa, he, syat, should become, swajana, a relative, na, not, saha, such a person, syat, should become, pita, a father, na, not, saha, he, syat, should become, janani, a mother, na, not, sa, she, syat, should become, daivam, the worshipable deity, na, not, tat, that, syat, should become, na, not, pati, a husband, cha, also, saha, he, syat, should become, na, not, mochayet, can deliver, yaha, who, samupetamrityum, one who is on the path of repeated birth and death. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. One who cannot deliver his dependents from the path of repeated birth and death should never become a spiritual master, a father, a husband, a mother, or a worshipable demigod. Please repeat. One who cannot deliver his dependents from the path of repeated birth and death should never become a spiritual master, a father, a husband, a mother, or a worshipable demigod. Purport. There are many spiritual masters, but Rishabdev advises that one should not become a spiritual master if he is unable to save his disciple from the path of birth and death. Unless one is a pure devotee of Krishna, he cannot save himself from the path of repeated birth and death. Tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti sorjuna. One can stop birth and death only by returning home back to Godhead. However, who can go back to Godhead unless he understands the Supreme Lord in truth? Janma karma chame divyam evam yoveti tattvataha. We have many instances in history illustrating Rishabdev's instructions. Excuse me. Shukracharya was rejected by Bali Maharaj due to his inability to save Bali Maharaj from the path of repeated birth and death. Shukracharya was not a pure devotee. He was more or less inclined to fruitive activity. And he objected when Bali Maharaj promised to give everything to Lord Vishnu. Actually, one is supposed to give everything to the Lord, because everything belongs to the Lord. Consequently, the Supreme Lord advises in Bhagavad Gita, Yad karoshi yadashnasi yad johoshi dadasi yad tapasyasi konteya tad kurushva madarpanam. O son of Kunti, all that you do, all that you eat, all that you offer and give away, as well as all austerities that you perform, should be done as an offering unto me. This is bhakti. Unless one is devoted, he cannot give everything to the Supreme Lord. Unless one can do so, he cannot become a spiritual master, husband, father, or mother. Similarly, the wives of the Brahmanas who were performing sacrifices gave up their relatives just to satisfy Krishna. This is an example of a wife rejecting a husband who cannot deliver her from the impending dangers of birth and death. Similarly, Prahlad Maharaj rejected his father, and Bharat Maharaj rejected his mother, Janani Nasasyat. The word Daivam indicates a demigod, or one who accepts worship from a dependent. Ordinarily, the spiritual master, husband, father, mother, or excuse me, or superior relative accepts worship from an inferior relative. But here Rishabdev forbids this. First, the father, spiritual master, or husband must be able to release the dependent from repeated birth and death. If he cannot do this, he plunges himself into the ocean of reproachment for his unlawful activities. Everyone should be very responsible and take charge of his dependents, just as a spiritual master takes charge of his disciple or a father takes charge of his son. All these responsibilities cannot be discharged honestly unless one can save the dependent from repeated birth and death. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shlakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So the Bhagavatam is famous for not beating around the bush. Bhagavatam doesn't state things in a necessarily easy way to digest when it comes to matters of this material world. On the one hand, Srimad Bhagavatam is the sweetest literature. Nigamakalpataror galitam phalam. It's the ripened fruit, and it's full of rasa, or nectar, of Krishna and his leelas. So it's very sweet and it's very wonderful. But on the other hand, the Bhagavatam is quite cutting in its statements, and it really doesn't mince words. It doesn't try to avoid speaking the bitter truth when it's necessary. It promises this right at the beginning. The second verse itself says, Dharma projita kaitavotra paramo nirmat saranam satam. That this book gives up all forms of religion that are kaitava, that cheat. And what are those forms of religion that cheat? Well, that's being described here in this purport, in this verse, in relation to family relationships. Here's what cheating looks like when it's involved in our relationships. The fundamental mode of cheating is this. We, as parents, as husbands and wives, as teachers, in any form of responsibility, we have our experience in this world. And we find that regardless of how hard we try, it is impossible to find a situation in the material world that is happy, that is comfortable, that is perfect. If there's one thing we learn from living in family life, in having a marriage, in a relationship, in having children and so on, is that nothing is easy, right? Nothing is easy. I mean, not to make us all depressed in the morning here, but if we think about it, there's no point at which there is no struggle, right? I mean, just look at the story of the Supreme Lord himself, Sri Ramachandra. There was practically no point in his life where there was no struggle. I'm sure his childhood was wonderful, it was perfect, but we don't know much about his childhood. We don't hear that part like we do Krishna's part. Rather, we hear the time when he's going off to the forest, despite his parents not wanting him to, with Vishwamitra, when he's just a young boy, practically, a young man, with Lakshman. And already the pangs of separation have started with his family, with his mother and his loving father. We hear about his marriage to Mother Sita, and that is probably the highest point of the Ramayana, is their wedding. It's glorious, it's wonderful, it's beautiful, it's always happy, right? But from that point on, it's all downhill, right? It's one struggle after another, after another. And it's not that it's miserable, but it's a struggle, right? It's a struggle. They get banished to the forest just when it comes time to coronation. Then Sita Devi is kidnapped in the forest. I mean, they presumably spend some 13 years really happily in the forest, but we never hear about those 13 years very much, the happy years. The next thing we hear is that she's kidnapped and then she's taken to Lanka and so on and so forth. The whole story is one of struggle. Why? Because the Bhagavatam says, and only the Bhagavatam says, other Ramayanas don't, but the Bhagavatam tells us is that it's because Lord Ramachandra wants to show us the reality of this world. That if we want to enter headfirst into this world, then we're going to have to struggle. There are no relationships, no family life that comes, that's a fairy tale, right? It's not there. Have you ever noticed that all fairy tales in this world, they end at the point of marriage, right? If you look at the story of Shrek, they're looking for each other, and the prince and the princess, and they're falling in love, and they're struggling, and then they get married, and the story's over. Or they ride off into the sunset on a horse, and everyone waves goodbye, and then the story's over. Right? Because the fairy tale is up to the point of marriage, and then comes what? Lots of struggle, right? Lots of struggle. Comes all the changing of the diapers and all the struggles with sickness and health and financial difficulties and marital conflicts and on and on and on and on. So this is the thing. We all know this, right? As adults, as parents, we're well aware of this reality, of this fact. We experience it every day. And yet, what do we want for our children in general? Exactly the same, right? Exactly the same. Now, if that's not cheating, what is? We've been through it, we've experienced it, we've struggled our way through it, and yet when it comes to our children, we want them to do exactly what we've done in the same way. You too go through the same thing. You too experience all of that. Even though we know from experience that the promise of lasting happiness is a mirage. Even though we know that this is not sufficient to make ourselves or them happy. And yet we insist that they must. Not just we, all of society does. This is called Kaitava Dharma. This is called dharma that cheats. It's cheating religion. It's dharma, it's duty. This is the duty of a mother and a father. But it's a cheating duty. Because we're promising something to our children that we know we cannot deliver. Isn't that the definition of cheating? Right? When someone comes to you and says, here, just sign here and you'll get $1 million. You have one of those, what do you call them, those schemes, the pyramid schemes? Right? All you have to do is you stay at home and you do this little selling and refer to your friends and you can make $1 million. And you ask them to sign here. And cheating means you know that it can't be delivered. You know that you're not going to win, you're going to lose, and yet you're still entice someone else into it. That's the very definition of cheating. So therefore, our relationships without Krishna consciousness, without spiritual foundation, are grounded on cheating. They're relationships of cheater and cheated. We've been cheated, and then we turn around and we cheat those who are dependent on us by promising them something we know cannot be delivered. The Bhagavatam in this verse is saying, if that's the type of mother or father that we're planning to be, don't bother. It's better not to do it. If that's the type of husband or wife that we're planning to be, then we better not. It's just going to increase the cycle of suffering, of samsara, of repeated birth and death again and again. Because fruitive activities will always bring fruits. And those fruits will be sometimes sweet and sometimes bitter. And more bitter than sweet. And therefore, don't cheat. Right? Therefore, gurur nasasyat, janani nasasyat. Don't be a spiritual master. Don't be a relative. Don't be. Relationships in this world without Krishna are founded on terms that are not sustainable in the long run. The relationship between husband and wife, between man and woman, is founded on lust. And when that lust is not satisfied, and I don't mean just sexual desire, but lust of all kinds, that he will serve me in this way, she will please me in this way, when that vision, that Bollywood vision of the perfect life doesn't manifest, then the marriage starts to fall apart, either legally in divorce, as so many marriages do, or uh, uh, not formally, but informally, in the form of a weakened relationship. If you have mother and with relatives, right? Svajano, it's described here. Relationships with relatives in this world, so often founded on the basis of money, on wealth. We give nice gifts to them, they give nice gifts to us. We get something from them, they get something from us. And then a person becomes destitute and the relatives disappear. They go away. Even the relationships between mother and father, which are probably amongst the purest relationships in this world, are not lasting. There comes a time when even that relationship slips through our hands as our parents depart this world, or even more tragically if our children do. Relationships in this world that are founded simply on physical relationships are bound to lead us to a place of disappointment. They're bound to not be sustainable. And if we ended the class here, then it would be a really, really depressing picture of this world, isn't it? That would be like, oh my God, this is terrible. What do we do? But the Bhagavatam is not a depressing book. It's a cutting book. It's a sharp book. It speaks clearly the truth, but it does so because it gives a positive alternative. It gives hope for something better, something greater. It gives hope for relationships that are transformed, that are founded on something beautiful that makes them lasting and meaningful. In the Bhagavatam, you have the Kashyapas and Ditis, you have Hiranyakashipus and Prahlad, you have all these tortured relationships that are grounded on nothing but material desire. But you also have beautiful relationships that are founded on wonderful things, that are meaningful, that are lasting. The thing is that when we put Krishna in the center of these relationships, when we answer to a higher calling, when we tell our children that this material world is what it is, and I have to prepare you for it, no doubt. But there's something more as well. There's a higher gift I can give you. It transforms the relationship in such a way that it makes every struggle that we have, every struggle that we do in this world, it turns it from being a painful, destructive thing, it turns it from being trauma to being sacrifice for a higher goal, for a better good, for something greater. Then every struggle we have becomes an adventure. It becomes something on the path to a greater good. It becomes like scaling a mountain, just like these mountaineers. I often wonder what drives them to put themselves through so much effort, through so much work. Have you ever thought of that? Unless you're a mountaineer. It's difficult to make sense of them struggling up Mount Everest. There's a chance for death at every moment. And so much falling and so much pain and so much lack of breath and so much preparation and so much effort. But it's an adventure, right? It's scaling new heights. It's getting to a place that ordinary people don't get to. Our struggles, our challenges in family life become like that. They become one more hill to conquer as we scale the great mountain. as we work our way to liberation, as we work our way back to Godhead, as Prabhupada is saying in the purport, who can be happy without going back to Godhead, without this goal of coming to the ultimate level? And when our relationships are founded on that, they become more deep and meaningful than we can ever imagine. That same relationship of husband and wife that is otherwise so selfishly driven, when it's founded on love between partners on the basis of their devotion to Krishna, on the basis of a shared relationship of service to Krishna, it can become very profound. It can become very beautiful. It can become very powerful. Even then, sometimes it can be difficult. In this material world, there's always, nothing is picture perfect, right? There's no fairy tale. But there's potential, like Kardama Muni and Devahuti in Srimad Bhagavatam. The relationship they shared in their devotional service was something very profound, very deep. We understand her and she understands us in a way that is so deep, that is so powerful and profound. That love becomes so significant that someone who is not a devotee, who doesn't have a spiritually founded relationship, cannot understand, cannot appreciate what that synergy is like. If there's any hope to be happy, then it is through this. The parent and child relationship, over time, it weakens normally as the kids fly off the nest and the parents become embarrassing to the teenagers, and as they go on with their own life and they get married to their own partners, and we start to become, appendages in the whole process. But not necessarily. If that relationship is founded on a relationship of Krishna consciousness, then that can grow over time. We can get to know them better. They can grow to appreciate and be grateful to us even more in the course of time. So relationships founded in Krishna consciousness go from meaningless struggle to glorious sacrifice and adventure, so that we can one day look back at everything we've done and everything we've experienced, take a deep breath and say, wow, that was good. That was a struggle, but it was good. We did it with Krishna. We did it for Krishna. He was there all along. And I have grown through the process. I'm a better person. And I would never give up any of that. I would never give up any of it, even the tough parts, if I had to do it over again. This is the difference between struggling as a devotee and struggling without Krishna. The difference is, the way we know that we're doing this for Krishna is that when we go through the struggle, when we go through the difficult parts, we come out the other end feeling more grateful. If that happens, then we know we went through it the right way. We know it was given by Krishna, not by Maya. It wasn't meaningless karma. It's actually a very contradictory thing, very confusing thing. It makes no sense on the outside. Normally, if we go through misery, we come out on the other end feeling bitter, feeling frustrated. And we must say that even for devotees, this is often the case. As we're going through the suffering, in the moment, it's difficult, it's painful, it's a struggle. Sometimes we can't see above the water, right? You just feel dunked in it the whole time. But if we continuously try to keep at it with the right consciousness, samyak vyavasito hisa, with being fixed, sthita prajna, in the right consciousness, we try. We don't succeed all the time, but we try. When we come out the other end as devotees, there's something amazing happens. When we look back in hindsight, sometimes it's 6 months later, sometimes a year, sometimes 5 years, sometimes 15 or 20 years later, we look back at what we've been through. Our gratitude for Krishna does not decrease, it grows. It grows. Can you imagine being grateful for suffering? It's contradictory. It's confusing. It makes no sense. And yet this is what happens in the life of a devotee. Is we look back and our gratitude for Krishna grows. It grows. And so we move forward with that conviction. We move forward with that determination, with that hope that the good is, of course, joyful, and we should appreciate it. We should enjoy it. Family life anyway has its struggles, so there's no point in avoiding the joys or in trying to be too detached from the joys. When the joys come, we should accept them. We should appreciate them. We should not go over the top in terms of, using them for sinful activity, but we should genuinely enjoy the happiness that family life brings, that these relationships bring, of husband and wife and mother and father and relatives. They have their good spots, they have their joys, and we should appreciate them. We should embrace them because they too are given from Krishna. Happiness and distress, both in a devotee's life, are handed by the Lord. So we should appreciate them. But when the struggles come, which they inevitably will, then we should move forward with this hope, with this determination, that when I come back, when I come out the other side, I will look back and feel ever more grateful to the Lord for every single thing I've been through. Because we will come out stronger, we will come out happier, we will come out closer in our relationship to Krishna. That relationship will grow very, very deep. Anyone who's been married for many years, can attest to this. Right? That as we initially there's a love that's present between a husband and a wife, or a boyfriend and a girlfriend. Right? Initially, it's called falling in love, right? And it's because you fall into it, right? You don't know what you're doing, and you kind of stumble into it. And as you fall, you bump your head and you hit this part and that part, and but it's still so joyful, right? But that kind of happiness, we know it's good, but it's still very thin, right? It's euphoric, but it's very thin. It's not. It doesn't have depth with it. And for anyone who's spent some years married, can tell, right, if that marriage has worked out well, that over time, as we struggle and we struggle and we struggle together, it's in those together struggles that we understand what is the meaning of love. We understand what love means and what it means to actually care for a husband or a wife, or a daughter or a son, or our parents, or other relatives. It's in those struggles together that we understand, yes, now I know what love means. The same is true with Krishna. The same is true with Krishna. Initially, when we come to Krishna, it's a euphoric love. We come before the deities and we think, wow, they're so beautiful. And we're chanting and dancing and we're doing our japa, and we feel something for Krishna, and it's ecstasy. It's like we've been waiting for this forever. It's like the wedding night. Krishna is just brilliant. He's wonderful. And that is love, no doubt. Krishna has attracted our heart. He's taken our heart and he's tied a knot to it. But it's only when we struggle with Krishna in the course of our lives, that's when we know what it is to love him. When we can say, yes, Krishna and I, we've been through a lot together. We've been through a lot of struggles together. He's been there for me and I've been there for him. Now I know what it means to love Krishna. Then when we look at the deities, they still look so beautiful. But there's no more meaning in Krishna's glance. When he looks at us, it's full of meaning. When we look at him, it's full of meaning. Because there's so much in that relationship. When we chant our japa, it's full of feeling. It's pregnant with all of what we've been through with Krishna. We know what Krishna is capable of, what he's capable of putting us through, and what he's capable of pulling us out of. We know that. And so our love for Krishna becomes deep. It becomes substantial. And we come to know what is real love. The real love that the Pandavas had as they went through everything with Krishna. The real love that all these great devotees, Queen Kunti had as she went through Krishna. That love becomes profound. It becomes meaningful. It becomes significant. So, if we can put our children, our husbands and our wives, our relatives, our students, whoever we are responsible for, if we can put them on that path, then we've not only pushed them onto the roller coaster of life, but we've given them a way to get off too. We've given them a way to control their destiny, to find meaning through their experiences, their meaning to what they're going to go through. And that's the real gift that we can give as parents. That's actually our duty as parents. That's really what we can do as husbands and wives for our family members. The rest of it is good, but everyone does it. Everyone does the taking care physically part. The birds do it, the bees do it. Everyone does it. What we can do, something special, is we can give them the path to find meaning through everything they know. We know that they're going to experience as life takes them through its roller coaster ride. There's going to be high moments and there's going to be low moments, but we've prepared them well. We've prepared them well. So, how can we prepare them well? That's, of course, a huge subject, and it's the subject of these 2 days at the homeschooling convention. But a couple of thoughts from this story, from this section of Bhagavatam. These are the teachings of Rishabdev to his 100 sons. And some thoughts on what we can do to prepare. The first thing is, if that still hasn't happened, right? The first thing is that we start with good raw material. If our goal is to liberate our dependence from the cycle of birth and death, start with good raw material that is likely to be liberated. What I mean by this is that in any relationship, so when it comes to marriage, we seek a partner who is also spiritually inclined. If we haven't yet gotten married, then this should be a priority for us. That whoever we marry, we try our best to find someone who is similarly inclined to walk this path that the Bhagavatam teaches us. If we haven't yet had children, then we try to prepare to invite a child in our life who is ready for liberation through the process of preparing our consciousness before the act of conception. This is called Garbhadhan Samskar. If we are a guru or a teacher Then we select students, a guru, just like any teacher, right? If a guru just initiates any random person and then says, I'm going to liberate you, well, the chances of success are slim. It is the guru's responsibility to test the disciple first, to make sure that they are ready for this purpose. So we prepare the ground as much as we can in our relationships by selecting relationships, by inviting persons into our lives who are ready for this ultimate goal. Now, that may be done already. Maybe it's too late. Who knows? But now, at whatever point, well, we have to say, okay, now let's move ahead by making Krishna a priority, by making Krishna consciousness a priority. Rishabdev, in his instructions to his sons, before he says this verse, where he says, no one should become a mother and father unless you are prepared to liberate your dependents, he explains how to do it. And there's three qualities in particular that he mentions in the preceding verses. Those three are wisdom, compassion, and patience. Three things, he says. Wisdom, compassion, and patience. Wisdom means we need to know what we're doing. Unless we educate ourselves, we're not going to stumble into being good parents. Sometimes we have this attitude that, oh, I've been through it. Like, I've changed diapers and I've raised kids up to 3-4 years. Therefore, I know what to do. I know what parenting is about, and I can advise anyone on parenting. It's not true. Just because we've been through it doesn't necessarily mean that we've learned anything from it. Just going to the school of hard knocks is not sufficient for wisdom. This is what we have Shastra, this is what we have scripture for, is that we need to reflect, we need to see, we need to receive the collected wisdom that for thousands of years the sages have passed over time to us, and fortify ourselves with that as we dive into any relationships, particularly as we become parents. Just stumbling through it will not make us good parents, nor will it prepare us to advise our children or to advise other parents. So, wisdom is crucial. Then compassion. And I think, personally, I feel compassion is probably the most important one. That in all of our relationships, if we can just be kind, then things won't go too wrong. We'll save ourselves the most difficult things. In any situation of conflict or struggle or challenge, if we don't know what to do and we can't figure out how to respond, and our emotions are getting the better of us, and we feel like we're ready to explode, the one question we can ask is, how can I be kind in this situation? How can I be compassionate? Because when we put that kindness out into the world, then we receive it back. And when we get compassion back from others, we have what we need to make it through. This is the law of karma. Right? Whatever you put out into the world, it comes back at us. And if we put out kindness into the world, if we can be anything in this world, we should be kind. We should be compassionate. This is the crest jewel of Krishna's qualities. It's the very pinnacle of his qualities. This is why when Uddhava is remembering Krishna in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and he meets Maitreya Muni, and he's remembering Krishna's pastimes, what is that beautiful verse he says? He tells him, Aho Bakiyam Stanaka Lakuta. Oh, how merciful is my Lord Krishna, that he took a witch who came to kill him by giving him poisoned breast milk. Krishna was just a baby, and Putana comes to kill Krishna. And Krishna is so compassionate that he gives her the position of his own mother. He takes that wicked intention as being genuine, gives her the benefit of the doubt, and says, maybe she is trying to be my mother. Maybe that poison was just an accident. Who knows, And Krishna gives her the benefit of doubt that none of us would ever do. So extreme it is. He says, who would ever go to a master other than Krishna? Who could find someone more compassionate in this world than this Lord? And it's the crest jewel of Krishna's qualities. And if we embody just a little bit of it, then we become a vehicle for Krishna's work, for his presence in this world. Wisdom, compassion, and then the third thing he says is patience. And this is something we can learn from experience, right? That endless amounts of patience are needed to raise children. He says, specifically, Rishabdev says that a mother and father should teach their children, just 2-3 verses before. He says, a mother and father should teach their children and not get angry when they do not learn even after repeated instructions. This is so true. Whether it's trying to teach them a simple math problem, again and again and again, they don't get it. Or whether it's trying to teach them as teenagers. I told you, don't go there, don't hang out with those friends. And yet, they do not listen. And so we naturally become angry. And Rishabdev says, no, don't do that. Be patient. Do not get angry despite the fact that after repeated instruction, they do not listen. Because again, this is what Krishna does for us. He tells us again and again and again and again in the Bhagavatam, in the Bhagavad Gita, he gives us this message. And yet, we don't listen. So we offer the same to our children. The key point to remember is that if we want our children at the end of this life to go back home, back to Godhead, then we have to prioritize. We have to win the weighing scales. We always talk about a balance between material and spiritual, right? Finding the right balance in life, the material-spiritual balance. The reality is, we need to emphasize the spiritual. If we emphasize the spiritual, then we might end up with a balance. If we try to balance, we're going to end up like this. The spiritual is going to go out the window. Why? Because this world is not a balanced place. Over and over and over again, our children receive reinforcement on the material side. What's the first thing that people ask our kids when they meet them? Yeah, after the name. What's the first thing? How old are you? What grade are you in? Right? What's your favorite subject? What's this telling them? Are you a good student? Are you studying? In college, all the way through, they are supported in every way. So they graduate, and they graduate on time. There's counseling programs in high school, there's mentorship programs, there's extra tutoring, there's constant reinforcement in society. Everyone asks them again and again and again, are you studying? What are your grades like? What are your career goals? What do you want to be when you grow up? Right? Are they expecting an answer like, I want to be a pure devotee? No, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be this, right? Society reinforces it 1,000,000 times. How many times do you meet people who ask your children, how's your chanting going? How many rounds do you chant? How was Mangalarti this morning? What did you read in Bhagavatam recently? It's very rare to find people who will ask our children that question. The point is, the world gives unlimited amounts of reinforcement on the material side. On the spiritual side, we're on our own, more or less. So if we want them to grow up as devotees, if we want them to have a balanced material and spiritual life, then we have to overemphasize the spiritual. We need to be heavier on this side, to place more time and energy here, and then we'll see them come out balanced, well-rounded, wholesome kids. Otherwise, the spiritual will gradually decrease over time. It'll become a shadow. It's a risk. It's a risk. It's scary, it's frightening, because the whole world is moving in this direction. And we think an hour more of study or an hour of chanting. Bhagavatam. A little more study and the grades could be a little better. So it's a risk, it's a challenge, it's frightening for parents. And yet, the Bhagavatam is full of stories, of accounts of devotees who again and again have taken risks for Krishna, and Krishna has come through for them. He's helped them. He's made them better than we can ever imagine. And I'll end here with the example that Prabhupada, one of the examples that Prabhupada gives in this purport, that of the wives of the Brahmins. In traditional Indian society, typically the husband is the head of the household, and the wife, she has certain duties in relation to that. And in typical Indian culture, it's inappropriate for the wife to go against what the husband wants or desires, particularly if it means going outside the home, doing something in an external setting. And the Bhagavatam is amazing because it takes typical cultural stereotypes and again it will turn them upside down in order to make the point that devotion to Krishna trumps everything. It supersedes everything. In the case of the wives of the Brahmins, Krishna, as a little child with his friends, he's in the forest and he's really hungry. Perhaps many of you will know this story. And his friends are hungry. Krishna says, please, there's a settlement of Brahmins nearby. You should go to them and ask them for food. They will give you some. And the boys go off and they go to these Brahmins who are engaged in Vedic sacrifices, chanting Vedic hymns. And they say, please, we're hungry. Krishna's hungry. They don't say we are hungry. They say, Krishna's hungry and Balaram is hungry. Can you please give us some food? They think if we use Krishna and Balaram's name, we'll get some food because they're God. So the Brahmins respond, no. They don't even respond, actually. They don't say anything. They ignore the children. Why? Because they're engaged in work that is too elevated, too advanced. They're chanting Vedic mantras and they're feeding the fire. Never mind that the fire is the mouth of God. And now God is standing there with his mouth open and saying, I'm hungry, feed me. And we say, no, you stay there. I'm feeding the fire and hopefully this will get to you. So they go back disappointed. And Krishna tells them, actually, I knew they wouldn't give you any food. I just wanted you to see that. Now, go instead to their wives and ask them. And so they go. And the wives of the Brahmins are seated on the edges of the Yagyashala on the sacrifice. They also have a role at certain points, so they're there. And it says they're sumangali, they're decorated with all the signs, traditional signs of marriage, and the red dot and the bangles and all of that. And the boys come to them and they say, please, we're hungry, we need some food. Krishna's there in the forest, he's hungry. The Brahmins' wives know, they're right there. They know that their husbands have just ignored these boys. They know that giving Krishna food will mean displeasing their husbands. They know that going out to the forest to meet someone is exactly the type of thing a chaste wife should not be doing in this time and in this culture. They know that in every way, socially, this is going to be a problem. And yet, they pick up all the food they have. They think, this is our opportunity to render some service to Krishna. And they run to the forest, just like the gopis went. The stories are actually very similar. They run to the forest. They feed Krishna. And it says there, Krishna, it's so beautiful, the description. Krishna is standing there with his hand on the shoulder of a cowherd boy and a flower in his ear, tucked in his ear. And he's just totally relaxed and he's looking so beautiful. And they come and they give Krishna all this food and they feed him and they feed him. And then Krishna says, "Thank you so much for feeding me. Please go home." And they say, "We can't. All of our society and our community is going to criticize us. We have left home to go to the forest to meet another man. This is going to be horrible. Everyone's going to look down upon us. Better we stay here. We just run away from home. We give up our life, whatever, but we can't go back." And Krishna tells them something very wonderful. This is where the story is a little different than the gopi story. He says, "Please go back. I want to assure you that when you go back, wherever you go, you will be honored and respected by everyone. No one will laugh at you. No one will make fun of you. No one will criticize you. Your honor will not be destroyed. Go back and you will be honored by everyone, including your husbands." And so they go. And Krishna's words come true. When the wives come back and the husbands see them, they look at themselves. They look at their wives whose faces are glowing from their association with Krishna. They look at themselves and right away they understand that we've made a terrible mistake. That here Krishna himself, God himself, was asking for food and we were so busy in our ritual, we were so arrogant of our position that we ignored him. And they say this verse, "Dhik janma, dhik varna," dhik, which means fie upon our birth, fie upon our rituals. Condemned is our great position. That when Krishna came to us, we could not see him. We could not ignore, we could not serve him. In fact, they say, our wives are our gurus. They are our teachers, our spiritual masters, because they show us the path to come to Krishna. The Bhagavatam shows us again and again that if we take risks for Krishna, Krishna will come through. If we prioritize Krishna consciousness for our children, they will not grow up to be duffers and fools and incompetent members of society. To the contrary, Krishna will ensure that they are the best, that they are honored and respected everywhere they go, that they are worshipped and revered in time. Krishna will show if we are willing to take the risk for him, just like he did with the Brahmana's wives, just like he's done with everyone in the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's just up to us to take these words from the Bhagavatam and say, no, this is going to be my priority. This is what I'm going to give my children. This is the path to happiness. And so along with everything else I do for them, from changing diapers to educating them, I'm also going to give this, Krishna consciousness. And in this way, I can fulfill my responsibility as a mother and as a father and a husband and a wife. So I will stop there and see if anyone has any questions or comments or suggestions or thoughts. Yes, Prabhu.
Srila Prabhupada said, one quotation, I remember, I was in New Delhi, I saw in someone's stores, it was posted very nicely. It was written, and give them spiritual education so that they will be thankful to rest of your life.
Yes.
Very nice. You know.
Yes.
And one more thing also I came to know, that patience, regarding patience, patience with family is called love. Patience with relatives is called compassion. Patience with God is called faith. somewhere it is written.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhu. Um, I really appreciated the points, especially the latter part where you emphasized these three main qualities. That was really touched home for me. Um, this last line, I'm just, the last pada with the mochayad, this idea of giving liberation seems still a very like high thing, because normally we hear that only Krishna and maybe, maybe Shiva can give liberation, but I'm a jiva. So what's really being said here? If you could help clarify. I think you spoke to it to some degree, but still, it's still kind of sticking for me. Like, wait a second, is it even possible for me to do such a thing? Is the Bhagavatam kind of teasing me a little bit?
Yeah.
What's going on?
So I'm so glad you asked that question because I ran out of time to discuss that point. So it's just perfect. I didn't adequately discuss about how much can we accomplish. So we try to begin with good raw material, then we do our best to emphasize Krishna consciousness. But then what about the result, right? And how much can we expect? And the reality is that we can't guarantee the outcome. Only Krishna can, right? He is Mukunda, the giver of liberation, as you're saying. So all we can do is try our best. And then everyone has to fly their own plane. Our children have to make their own choices. Our husbands and wives and relatives all have to do their own thing, right? And our children will have their own desires they have to work through in the course of their lives. So we can't force, nor should we try. We can't control an outcome. In fact, the desire to control the outcome is in itself a sign of illusion, right? Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. Krishna says only a fool thinks I'm the controller, I'm the doer. So when we try to control our children, it doesn't work out really well. Not in the long run, it does it. If you try to control a husband or a wife, it's exactly a recipe for problems, right? We're not the controllers. But what we can do is for those who are responsible in our care, we can stack the cards in favor of their becoming devotees. We can give them all they need for it. Then to take it or to leave it, that's up to them, right? But we can prepare them. It's just like brushing your teeth. We insist on our kids brushing our teeth in the morning, right? Now, as soon as they grow up and leave the house, go to college or whatever, they can stop brushing their teeth, right? I mean, there's nothing we can do to make them brush their teeth their whole life. If they so choose, they can stop brushing their teeth and prepare themselves for root canals for the rest of their life, right? But we can prepare them, we can stack the cards in favor of good dental health their whole life, right? This is an advertisement for my dentist here. We can stack them in favor of good dental health for their whole life by what? Number one, creating good habits of brushing your teeth, of oral hygiene. And number two, by giving them at least what? 16, 17, 18 years of good teeth, which last a lifetime, right? That's all we can do. Then it's up to them. So Krishna consciousness is the same way. We help our children up to a certain age. We insist that they engage in Krishna consciousness, that they practice good habits, that they develop good character. Now, when they grow up, they're welcome to do whatever they like, and kids do whatever they like, and sometimes they will leave Krishna consciousness. But those impressions that we give them as children, 18 years of good dental hygiene lasts a lifetime. Those same habits we give them as devotees for 18 years or more, it will last them a lifetime. Krishna doesn't disappear from the mind so easily, right? I mean, you remember nursery rhymes? You remember fairy tales? Yeah, you still brush your teeth, right? But do you need nursery rhymes at this point in your life? Do you want to remember them? No. You've probably never recited them for a long time, right? But you can't forget them, can you? No matter how hard you try, you can't get Mary had a little lamb out of your mind. The point is, what we give our children in their childhood sticks for a lifetime. If we give them Krishna, when they're children, Krishna will be there. Even if they don't want Krishna, he's still going to be there somewhere deep inside. And you never know when they might remember the holy name again, even if they consciously decide they want nothing to do with it.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I have two questions. My first question has to do with something I've observed, not just in our society, but also when I'm out meeting people who were raised Catholic or in any religious tradition. There's sometimes a tendency to rebel because they felt that I'm sure you get this question all the time. That what I would like to know is what makes the difference between a child who has been taught these good habits without pressure and with the freedom to think, well, I have the right to choose, you know, versus somebody who feels like I can't wait till this pressure is taken off of me so I can just go out and do what all my friends are doing. You know, what makes the difference between those two types of children? And I have a second question, but maybe you want to say something about that first.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. The amount of insistence that we have changes in the course of a child's life, right? So the amount of insistence we have for a 5-year-old is different than a 7-year-old, than a 10-year-old, than a 16-year-old. And if we're not conscious of the type of relationship that our children need from us at each stage of life, then we can end up in the type of situation you've described, where we're treating our 16-year-old like he or she is a 5-year-old and forcing them into activities that they don't want to do or at levels that they don't want to engage in, not recognizing that their free will, their own intelligence is manifesting. Instead of engaging that intelligence and engaging that free will, we're squelching it, we're crushing it, and then that sort of thing happens, that they can't stand it, right? So some amount of expressing individuality and rebelling, quote unquote, is natural. It happens at a certain point in life, and then gradually, when that settles down and everything, then we return to our priorities. So I think on the one level, we don't have to be afraid of that, because I mean, it's very much a fact that in the course of time, we become more and more like our parents. This, we at a certain stage in life, we become determined. I'm never going to be like that, right? We see our parents and we think, many things are good, and this thing, no way, right? And then pretty soon we have our own kids, and we're like, didn't my mother say that to me too? I'm saying exactly the same things. I'm behaving in the same ways. Uh, it's natural, right? So sure, the rebellion happens at a certain point in life, but over time, that's natural. Over time, our children will settle back down, and they'll come to a place that is closer to home, right? Closer to where they began. It won't be the same way as we are, and we wouldn't want that anyway, right? We're not the ideal, perfect models of people. We're also struggling. We're trying. So we want them to be better, actually, not us. We want them to be better than us. So they'll come back, but they'll come back close to home in some way, in their own way, right? And I think as parents, it's a challenge to recognize that at a certain point. One of the greatest simple symptoms of love is letting go. In any relationship, there's a time where love means to hold close, and in any relationship, there is a time when love means to let go. Both are forms of love when done in the right way and in the right time. When we think that it only means holding close, then if when it's time to hold close, we let go, it's horrible, it's painful. Like children, small children, who don't feel loved by their parents or who are neglected or ignored because of other problems. And when it's time to let go and we still hold close, it's also very painful, both for the parent and for the child. In any relationship, husband, wife, this is true. Sometimes love means to hold close, and sometimes it means to let go. And we need to know when. Krishna gives us signs. Okay, now's the time to let go. And this is how you will show your love for them.
Beautiful, spoken with so much realization and compassion. Um, my second question has to do with the polemic you created in your class. That here is, you could say, life in the material world without Krishna consciousness, and it's suffering that doesn't really create happiness, and then we cheat our children by preaching to them and teaching them the same exact model. So this is what the Bhagavatam is saying, not good, cheating religion. And here's the other side where, yes, there is suffering and struggle, but because Krishna is in the center, we're able to impart the right values. And then you brought out something very interesting that I've never contemplated before. It seems like you were saying we develop a fine character, that by going through the struggles that have a meaning at the end of it, then it's not just meaningless struggle, but it's, what did you say, glorious sacrifice, something like that. So I was thinking about this point because I've discovered a constitutional laziness about my own character. I believe that how I see the world is right, who I am is good. There doesn't have to be some significant shift in my personality or character as a person. I'm good enough for Krishna. But as you were speaking, I'm realizing I'm probably not good enough for Krishna. There probably has to be a lot of growth I have to go through. And frankly, most of our growing happens through periods of struggle and suffering. So I was just wondering if you can give some advice on how do we shift our you could say, instead of making decisions in life that will minimize suffering and struggle, so we can just kind of coast through. You know what I'm saying? And then we look at the value of our life as, wow, here's so many areas where I don't have to struggle in my life. I must be living a good life. But maybe we're shortchanging ourselves. We're not developing the character we need to develop. So sometimes struggle and suffering are very essential for that. But it's hard to, like I said, I have this laziness. It's hard to make that shift to choosing character evolution versus a life of just, floating through. I don't know. Do you see what I'm saying? Maybe you can give some
Yes.
advice on it.
Yeah. So the different people, different devotees will have different opinions on this. My personal opinion is that I don't think we have to seek out struggle or challenges. Uh, um, the world is such that it'll throw them our way, one way or the other. It's not a question of saying, what is the challenge that can make me better? What is the difficulty that will refine my character? That's not really the question. The question is, what does Krishna want me to do at this point? How can I act? How can I be Krishna conscious in this situation? How can I be the best person in this situation as a devotee of the Lord? And if we go through that, then struggles are going to come, the challenges are going to come. The world itself is full of them. We don't have to seek them out. But when we're there, then we need to ask, how can I be Krishna conscious in this situation? What can I learn from this? What can I gain from this? How can I grow from it? It will happen. It will happen if we try to have our intelligence, our consciousness properly situated in Krishna consciousness. That will be the result, right? We don't have to extraneously strive. I have the same nature. I have the easiest way out sort of nature, the path of least resistance. That doesn't, the material world doesn't spare anyone for that reason, right? You can choose the path of least resistance. There's going to be plenty of resistance on that path as well, right? There is no path of least resistance. This is the way the world is. But if we can be Krishna conscious in that situation, we're going to come out the other side much, much better. The Srimad Bhagavatam is designed like that. The process is designed like that. There's this, I'll end with this because our time is up. There's this motto that I really like that a professor, a colleague of mine, used to have on his door. He says, my job is to disturb the comfortable and comfort the disturbed. And this is exactly what the Bhagavatam does. Those of us who are, lazy, path of least resistance, the Bhagavatam, life itself, but Bhagavatam especially, shakes us and says, no, I'm going to disturb you with a verse like this. Right? What do you think you're doing here, being a mother or a father? And on the other hand, those of us who are in the thick of it, who are already way too disturbed, the Bhagavatam comforts us by giving us a vision of hope and a vision of hope for the future, of saying, no, it is possible to be satisfied and happy and joyful in this world. That's possible through this connection with Krishna. So to disturb the comfortable and to comfort the disturbed. This is the Bhagavatam. Thank you all so much for your attention.
And then we're starting at 9:45. upstairs. So we'll go down for breakfast and then third floor for the seminar, and we're starting at 9:45, so please try to wrap up in 40 minutes.